The Scent of Fire, written by Morbidhanson. I've been in a relationship for about a year now with my girlfriend, who I will call C for the purposes of this story. She's an international student here to pursue her master's degree. Being from overseas, she misses her family dearly and wanted to fly back for a few weeks to see them. This meant that she would miss Christmas and New Year's with me, so she wanted to do something special before she flew back. I decided then to take her camping. We had difficulties choosing a place, and I was surprised that C agreed to go in the first place, since she's a clean freak who has never spent a night outdoors. I, on the other hand, have been on dozens of camping trips and am an experienced outdoorsman. We decided to go to Death Valley because I'd never been there, and winter seemed like the best time to go. Also, C thought that it had a cool name. The weather seemed to be great, and we quickly prepared all the things we needed for the trip. We left nice and early to go to Death Valley and arrived around noon. The scenery was beautiful. Death Valley seemed to have every kind of possible desert landscape in one small area. We would see nothing but bleak stone mountains with jagged tooth-like stone outcroppings in one moment. But we would round a bend only to be treated to a vast expanse of desert plains on the next turn. Yet another turn revealed a landscape dotted with desert vegetation, while yet another let us glimpse treacherous cliffs within winding canyon roads. There were green, blue, red, orange, gray, and black rocks. Although the drive took nearly 5 hours, it felt like no time at all since we were enjoying the scenery so much. Death Valley is a really remarkable place, which was pleasantly surprising to me since all I expected was a monocolored wilderness of sand and sun-bleached stones. I taught C how to pitch a tent, build a fire, split wood, carve branches for roasting marshmallows, and how to cook over a wood fire. After I made pizza over the fire and we had our late lunch, we went hiking. Our campsite was off one of the more remote areas of the valley, sitting between two mountainous areas. A cool breeze blew through it, and the place was as quiet as the grave. There were perhaps 3 other groups camping in the area in our vicinity near the bathroom, but the individual campsites with accompanying fire pits were at least 100 feet away from one another. I had chosen a spot overlooking the main road, and we could see wildlife below us. Mostly jackrabbits, field mice, ravens, and other birds. I saw a bat, which probably came out of a nearby cave in the mountainous cliff, and I heard other campers talking about a kit fox that they had had wander curiously into their camp. By late afternoon, it had grown unusually cold. Despite the weather reports telling me that it was the same temperature as back home, I was freezing. Perhaps it was the cold dryness of the valley air, but the cold easily pierced through my 3 layers of clothing, and it seemed to cut straight down to the bone. I was cold despite moving around a lot in our campsite and having just returned with C from hiking. So I made a big pot of soup while our dinner cooked in the embers near the fire. I had made sealed foil packets with hamburger steak, mushroom gravy, and vegetables tucked inside. We scarfed down the delicious dinner, gathered some large felled branches to supplement our cords of wood, and then retired to our tent by 8 o'clock in the evening. Just before we went into the tent, C shouted to me in the dark that there was a rider on a horse coming down the hilly terrain in the camping area. She sounded quite awed by the sight and thought that it was really cool. I responded by turning my head towards the spot in the campsite that she referred to, which could not have taken more than 2 seconds. But all I saw was a very tall man near the smoky campfire of another site coming down the hill. He was so bundled up against the biting cold in a long brown blanket with a hoodie that I could not see his face. His blanket trailed down around his feet as he took short, stiff, shuffling steps towards the bathroom. His gait was unusual, but I attributed it to him being very cold as I was. As he walked through the site towards the bathroom, I saw his hooded head turn towards me. He was carrying a flashlight, but I couldn't see his face. A few seconds later, he disappeared from sight near the bathroom. C and I entered the tent, and we tried to go to sleep. I wanted to tell scary stories, but she was too scared to want to hear any of them. Then I thought of the man, and I asked her where she saw the rider supposedly on a horse. I had not seen any horse, just a bundled up man with a flashlight. C gave me a totally different account of the situation. She claimed she saw a person with a flashlight coming down the hill, but that he was bobbing up and down and traveling far faster than a person would ordinarily walk. As he went through the darkness of the campsite, she saw he was on a black horse and had called out to me. I thought that this was strange because I saw no horse, just a man. It would not have been possible for me to miss a horse coming down the hill. And when she called out, I didn't take that long to turn around in response to her voice. And also, the area was so quiet that I would have noticed if a rider had been on a horse. I tried to tell C that she had been mistaken, but she insisted that she had seen a man on a black horse. She described the shape of the horse's head and the tan color of the harness. I chalked it up to some sort of misunderstanding, and I cocooned myself in the blankets. Maybe she was talking about someone further up the hilly campsite, and I had simply looked in the wrong direction. Nevertheless, I told her what I saw and what I thought, and C seemed very frightened. She said there was just one man and didn't want to listen anymore, and we forgot about it and went to sleep. I woke up in the middle of the night to C nudging me awake and telling me that she thought she heard someone trying to get into our tent. My eyes shot open and I looked about the tent and the zippered entrance. It was just the wind. If someone had been at the tent flap, I would have been able to see their shadow against the campfire's light. I grabbed my machete and I poked my head outside to confirm that nobody was there. And I found that I was right. The campsite was dead silent. I thought that I heard footsteps a few minutes later, but I was already drifting back to sleep. When C and I woke up, we packed up our things and spent the rest of the day visiting other areas in Death Valley. In the evening, I drove us back to civilization, and along the way, on a desolate stretch of dark highway, C claims that she saw a rider on a horse going the direction that we were driving. I didn't see much, and I casually mentioned the night before, which almost brought C to tears. According to C, she had put more wood on the fire, gone to the bathroom in the middle of the night, and had an unsettling feeling that she was being watched or followed as she was returning to the tent. She had looked back to see a tall shadow near the bathroom door she had just come from. Instinctively frightened, she ran back to the tent and went inside. She claimed she saw the shadow of half a man cast on our tent. Half a man as in half a man lengthwise, with one arm, half a head, half a body, and one leg. She then heard our tent moving and heard the tinkering of the zipper on our tent, which is where she woke me up thinking that someone was trying to get in. I had seen no shadow and had attributed the tent noise to the wind. C said the shadow was gone by the time I woke up, but that she did hear footsteps later, around when she noticed that I was falling back asleep. The part about the footsteps was eerie, since I was pretty sure that I had heard footsteps too. Still, I tried to be logical and I told her that it was probably someone from another camp going to the restroom. And come to think of it though, I never did see the tall man going back up the hill to where his campsite should have been. I didn't say much to C since I didn't want to scare her. We were out of Death Valley and we were back in civilization anyway. We spent the day hanging out with C's friends and packing up the last of her luggage. We had dinner and then I took her to the airport in Los Angeles. The airport was very crowded, which was not unusual since it was almost Christmas. Still, I noticed a tall man lingering a few meters behind us as we made our way through the crowd. He maintained about the same distance, but since I am very alert, I could tell that he was following us. The man was wearing a brown blanket, tattered clothes with a hood tightly drawn about his face. He was also wearing boots, and he was acting like he was very cold, walking with an awkward gait like a man who is in a blizzard. The interior of the airport was quite warm, and I was feeling fine in my t-shirt and thin sweater. The man's worn garments contrasted sharply with those donned by most other travelers. I could see his lips, but not the rest of his face, and I made no effort to get a clearer look since I didn't want him to notice me looking at him. Something about him made me feel uneasy. When C and I made it to the check-in line, the tall man suddenly got closer, just like a leaf blown by a breeze. Without a sound, he was soon directly next to me and uncomfortably close. Less than 3 feet away, I mean. He was close enough that I could hear that he was muttering something under his breath over and over again. He was close enough to me that I could detect a distinct and strong smell emanating off his clothes and body. At first, I thought he was just one of those weird vagrants you sometimes run into in places like Los Angeles. I thought he was perhaps a homeless man looking for some handouts, or that he was some sort of troublemaker looking for a fight. I've encountered my share of antagonistic people like that, who go around for no good reason getting into unnecessary physical confrontations with total strangers. Perhaps he was hopped up on drugs or mentally ill. Maybe he was just some deadbeat scoundrel with nothing better to do but go around the airport and pick fights during the holiday. Or maybe he was even just some racist dude who doesn't like Asians and thought that we looked helpless enough to go and pick on. I've seen all these types of people, especially in the concrete jungle of the sleepless inner city that I so frequented in my partying days. Once, every so often, you encounter animalistic and dangerous people that you can't explain. People who are intent on conflict, set on attacking those that they perceive to be weak. Those people cannot be explained to or reasoned with. Although I am fairly athletic with several years of experience in multiple martial arts, and I'm slightly taller than average, I'm not particularly muscular, big, forceful, or menacing. I don't look like trouble. The thought of having to fend off the tall man made me a bit apprehensive, especially since he was clearly far larger and heavier than me. But, I mean, he wasn't large to the point of being fat, he was just big. The tall man kept his hands in his pocket, and I thought that he could probably have some sort of weapon. If he had managed to sneak one in, he could start shooting up the airport or pull a knife on us, for all I knew. C was completely unaware of him, and I kept myself between her and the man. I pretended to be facing the information board with the updated flight information, while C was facing the front of the line. The man's attention was clearly just trained on me, and he was still muttering. I could feel his unwavering gaze boring into the side of my head. Soon, I could make out that he was huskily murmuring a mixture of English and some other language that I couldn't recognize. It was like gibberish, gibberish, gibberish. Come on, man. Gibberish, gibberish, gibberish. I know that you see me. Gibberish, gibberish, gibberish. Come on, man. Gibberish, gibberish, gibberish. I know you see me. Gibberish, gibberish, gibberish. Come on, man. And so forth. Like a constant loop. I was on high alert now and actually getting quite annoyed. We didn't know this guy, and he had nothing better to do than to mess with us. I was just keeping track of him in my peripheral vision and getting ready to instantly react if he tried to do anything physical. My free hand was balled up into a tight fist in my sweater pocket, and my nerves were on a hair trigger. I was ready to spring and launch a punch with all the force that I could muster at the guy's face the instant he got his hands out of his pockets and moved them or anything in them closer to me or C. In my mind, I thought about the things that he might do and how I could react best to protect C and myself. Then my mind gave way to a mind-numbing fear as I gradually began to recognize the assertive smell coming off the man. When I first detected it, I didn't recognize it, and I just assumed that it was the scent of a homeless man or some filthy druggie. But it was not the odor of an unwashed person, garbage, or cigarettes. The smell that's so prevalent in the heart of Los Angeles. No, it was the heavy, but not unpleasant scent of a smoky fire. A wood fire. Perhaps a campfire. I turned to C to tell her that there was a strange person near me and to help me keep an eye on him, to which she turned and told me there was nobody there. I spun around only to realize that she was right. The man had just vanished, like smoke dispersed in the wind. The scent of fire lingered in the air. It told me that I hadn't just been imagining things. but the man was now nowhere in sight. He had been at least a head taller than most of the crowd, but there was no sign of him anywhere in the sea of people. Anyway, C is back in her home country now, and I've stayed awake most nights since she left, going over this and typing it out and thinking about it. I'd like to know if anyone else has had any similar experiences, and I'd like to know what that man might have been. Real quick edit. After I wrote this, I've done more research on Death Valley. There's apparently a Shoshone Native American Indian community established in Death Valley. I don't know if skinwalkers appear in Death Valley, but there are a lot of supernatural reports there. My encounter doesn't seem to correlate with skinwalker accounts that I've read, so I'm not sure what this strange guy could have been. Does anybody have any ideas?